University of Aarhus and
University of Aarhus is actually in Copenhagen.
Copenhagen, I know.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In my paper today, I'll focus on a specific kind of artifact, the wall charts or didactic boards. My name is Katrine Gjerløff, and I'm a historian, and I work as a project manager on the bicentennial celebration of compulsory education in Denmark, taking place next year in 2014. We will celebrate that Danish children have to go to school for 200 years. This for 200 years, they feel like it's 200 years. The Bicentennial Secretariat is based on the Danish Library of Education at Aarhus University, which is actually in Copenhagen. And the library is also the proud owner of a unique collection that has more than 12,000 wall charts collected from all over the world since the 1870s. But before I turn to wall charts, I would like to make a brief outline of the rise and fall of the Danish School Museum, since it is a foundation for the collection and the overarching theme of this symposium. The Danish Teachers Association was founded in 1874, and promotion and exhibitions of the teaching materials was one of the goals of the new association. Books, maps, objects, school furniture was exhibited at industrial fairs and also at national teachers' conventions. The association assembled quite a collection of stuff, but had no place to put it. But in 1887, Emil Sauter, one of the founders of the association, decided to place the collection at the attic of the municipal school where he was a teacher at the suburb of Copenhagen, and he named the modest collection the Danish School Museum. In the following years, the collection was moved to a better place, more spacious quarters in Copenhagen, and around 1900 it had established itself as a professional exhibit for both historical and the most modern state-of-the-art teaching materials. The museum director also functioned as a consultant for school boards on what things to buy, what furniture to invest in, and the museum had a huge international network and corresponded with all other museums and international teachers associations. The museum was open to the public and had special exhibitions on, for example, calculation devices and Montessori method, and about taxidermy and other zoological objects. The museum also had a large library where teachers and students could read about the newest trends in pedagogy. During these years, the director of the museum made a huge effort to exchange objects, books, and other stuff with other museums and also with the producers of teaching materials. And one result was this large collection of wall charts. But in the 1930s, the museum was closed, and its collection and the library was transferred to the library of the National Teachers College, then called the Pedagogical Study Collection. And after that, it was largely unused, outdated, and forgotten. But in 1995, many years later, the School Museum collection was revived and opened again at the brand new museum that also took the name of the Danish School Museum. This museum was financed by the Danish Teachers Association, again, the Ministry of Education, and also by a private insurance company called the Danish Teachers Fire Insurance, originally founded by some of the teachers of the Teachers Association. But unlike the original museum, this was a historical museum, which aimed at telling children stories about how school worked in the old days. It survived as quite a success. It published several books and presented a number of special exhibitions on history of education. These happy circumstances ended 13 years later, when the insurance company and the Teachers Association withdrew the support from the museum for financial reasons. And in a very short time, the museum closed, and the whole collection was stowed away in 10 containers in a storage facility, and they are still there today. So I envy you. It's really what we want to do with these things. One thing was saved from the containers, though. The Danish Library of Education formally still owns this collection and pays for the storage of the containers, but they rescued the 12,000 wall charts back to the library basement, where they are today. The wall chart collection is a treasure of pictures, and it attracts curiosity from most spectators who visit them. But in the 19th century, they were also an appraised pedagogical tool meant for educating the mind and reason of children. This method, as you know, is called object lessons, And as the word implied, objects were also a part of the teaching, as well as the wall chart. You see an example from Finland with the wall chart and a small model. Through questions and answers based on objects and pictures, the teachers could prepare the pupils for more traditional, memorizing learning and more advanced learning. And even though object lessons were an old pedagogical idea, the method was closely connected to and also promoted by a group of young, internationally oriented Danish teachers. They called themselves the new pedagogues, and they used object lessons as a tool for educating the logic, the senses, and language of the child, as opposed to more traditional pedagogy. Thus, the wall chart was seen as a very new thing around 1900, even though pictures and charts had existed in schools for many years. But now they became associated with this new, more psychologically informed methods and ideas of child's development. Object lesson could apply to most school subjects, though the most popular in our collection, at least in religion, natural history, history and geography, and also in general instruction on good manners and health. And this is reflected in the collection. In 1900, following a school law in 1899, object lesson actually became a compulsory part of the timetable in the Danish public school system, a subject in its own right for the youngest children. And they had really literally lessons where they had to watch, answer and think about pictures and objects to prepare them for further education. The charts illustrate the world, and the children had to watch and learn from it. And this pedagogy had a huge impact on later school reforms. The wall charts were used way up into the 20th century, but slowly disappeared from the 1960s. But what can we use the wall charts for today? That is quite a good question if you're responsible for more than 12,000 of them. And I'd love to hear more about what you do with the room. First of all, the collection has to be accessible. It is not accessible now. But the good news is that in 2013, just now, all the approximately 10,000 unique charts is being scanned and digitalized in cooperation with the Royal Library in Copenhagen. In time, they will be accessible for the public as well. This also goes for the registers, the collection, and that opens up for much more detailed research. The collection itself is not accepted now, and the future of the school museum is uncertain as well. But I want to say a few words about perspectives for future research and exhibition of these wonderful pictures. The collection, of course, includes all Danish-produced charts, but due to the exchange policy of the first school museum, it also contains quite rare specimens from other countries. For example, Japan and China, as these, and from Russia before the Soviet Union. Most foreign charts are German and Swedish and Dutch though, but we are still surprised by what we find in the collection as we open it and digitalize it. This international element of the collection opened up for a more comparative approach to research. What are the differences and the similarities of the charts from different countries? That's a nice thing to study. Another possible area of study and exhibitions concerns specific teaching subjects. What can the charts tell us about the practices and agendas? For example, geography and history, for example, nationalist and racial dimensions of the pictures. Another fertile approach is to look at the wall charts not only as a state-of-the-art teaching material, but also as art of the state. They are sources and representations of exactly the ideals and the ideas that children are supposed to learn and believe in. This is a representation of the world as you want the kids to know. So it could be a source to that as well. Another interesting perspective is that they can be used as sources to history of science and science popularization, telegraphs, industry, traffic. It's presented to children with these charts in many details. Same goes for biological subjects. Another interesting perspective is more aesthetical and art historical. They are sources to the visual culture that surround the children in the school environment. In present time, much is debated and said about children, visual media, and about children's capacity for analyzing messages and stories and pictures and movies. An analysis of the visual impact and content of the wall charts can perhaps provide a historical perspective on the discussion about children's understanding and use of pictures. An example is this exhibition Autopsy, that was shown at the free exhibition Center of Contemporary Art, I think it's called in English, in Copenhagen, where more than 500 of the charts were exhibited as art with no papers. I think the wall charts serve as a reminder that even though the spoken word and the letters often is associated with school and schooling, then pictures and arts and shapes and colors and other kinds of visual culture have been used by teachers and pedagogues repeatedly through history, and not only in modern times. And wall charts are sources to this colorful, but I think often overlooked chapter of teaching and schooling. And one thing is certain, that is that school children in Denmark in the late 19th century and early 20th century often had loads of pictures to look at, not only to learn from, but also to dream about and fantasize about the future. So pictures have been windows to worlds for generation of pupils, and to us they can't pass if we can't get to use them and exhibit them, be windows to the past. Thank you.
Thank you.